Thank you guys so much for coming. We are so humbled to have Mr. Jerry Kramer with us today. Jerry's NFL career spanned over 11 years with the Green Bay Packers. Mr. Kramer is a 5-time NFL champion and 2-time Super Bowl champion.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Moraine Park is proud to welcome to the stage Packer legend and 2018 Hall of Famer, Jerry Kramer.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. And it's about time. Oh, where'd we go? Are we done, or we started, or we're off and running?
We're off and running. Okay, so this is going to be more of an informal presentation. We're going to have some questions for him and then have some answers. So we're going to start off, of course, with what everyone would love to hear about Vince Lombardi and playing for him. What did he instill in you as a player?
Wow. I wrote 4 books about that. Actually didn't get finished. Started in Green Bay in 1958. We were 1-10-1. We whelmed one, we overwhelmed one, and we underwhelmed 10. And had the worst record in the history of the franchise. But had a lot of fun. Weren't really expecting to win. I went to the University of Idaho, that perennial power of the North, that had a 500 season when I was there, which was 4-1-4. First time in 28 years they'd been 500. So I hadn't much of a history of winning. Horning was at Notre Dame, where they were 3-7. A lot of guys didn't know much about winning. So we, and our coach, Scooter McLean, we were out in Los Angeles at the last game of the year, and Scooter went home from Los Angeles. He didn't bother coming back to Green Bay because he knew he was done, and it was a dismal season and a dismal record. Give you an example of our opponents. We were playing the Baltimore Colts in Baltimore, and they had Johnny U and Raymond Berry and that great football team they had. And they beat us 56-0. Damn near killed the horse. He ran around the field after every score. We almost killed him, really. So that was my introduction to professional football in the Green Bay Packer organization. And I assumed that, you know, that's the way things were. Next year, we actually have dinner with Curly Lambeau in L.A. And looking at the season, Curly thought there might be a chance that he could come back. He wanted to, but and we encouraged him to apply for the job. We all knew his history and how many championships he'd won. But in the off season, we heard that they had hired a guy named Lombardi. Who? Lombardi. Where was he a head coach? St. Cecilia Prep High School. That's his only head coaching experience? Yeah, but he was an assistant with the Giants, and he was the head coach at Fordham and a couple other areas, but had never been a head coach. And we're going, well, what happened? What about Curly? Curly been there. He's done it. He's got the records. So we didn't know about this Lombardi guy. So I come into camp with Joe Francis, a running, jumping, throwing quarterback from Oregon State. And we come in 3 days early because the veterans didn't have to be in camp till 3 days after the rookies. So we thought we'd play a little golf and maybe have a little something cool and then kind of hang out a little bit and enjoy it and kind of ease into camp. So we're down at the office, which is actually on Walnut Street, and it was an old house. And you look at the facilities today, it's kind of hard to believe. But Joe and I were standing there arguing with Jack Venisi, our general manager, about opening the motel or the dormitory. And he said the dorm doesn't open for a couple days when the rookies get here. Well, Jack, we got to have a place to stay. Well, you're going to have to get a motel. Jack, those motels cost $8. Come on, we ain't got that kind of money. And this short, dark-haired Italian fellow walks by. What's the problem? Well, they need a place to stay and the dorm isn't open. And we'll open the dorm. Put them up. He didn't say hello. He didn't say, how are you? He didn't shake hands. He just left, right? And so we went, is that him? Yeah, that's him, Jerry. Wow. So Joe and I check into the dorm, go play some golf, have a few beers, get back to the dorm kind of late, get a good night's sleep. Walking down the stairs the next morning with our golf clubs over our shoulder, there's a pair of legs, you know, walking down the stairs, you couldn't see the whole person, you could just see the legs. They were kind of stout legs, and they had shorts on, and they belonged to Mr. Lombardi. When we got down to the end of the the bottom of the stairs, he said, where do you think you're going? Well, we don't have to be in camp for 2 days. We're going to go play a little golf. Like hell you are. You're in the dormitory, you make all meals, all meetings, all practices, all curfews, just like everybody else. Now go get dressed. So we got 2 days of 2-a-days that were brutal. I mean, just incredibly difficult. We had guys losing consciousness on the field. Leon Crenshaw, big tackle, got showered, got on the bus, got back to St. Norbert's, standing in the chow line, whoo, passed out. It was something that nobody had ever seen, and nobody had ever worked that hard. We got a scout from St. Louis on the sidelines, and he says, Jerry, I've been in this business for 25 years, and I have never seen anybody work the way you guys are working. He said, if we did that in St. Louis, half the guys would be dead, and the other half would quit. So we're in Dachau, or the closest thing we know to it, right? And it's very, very angry about everything. I mean, we're just surviving, just barely staying alive. You go from the bed to the chow line, back to the bed for 30 minutes or 15. You get on the bus, you go to practice, you come back to the bed, you go to afternoon practice, then you go to the bowling alley. We used to bowl in the afternoons after practice. But we did that for about 2 weeks, and it looked like he was going to kill us all. And we just really didn't know, you know, it was a lot of resentment. And we'd talk about it amongst ourselves and how that rotten so-and-so and this, he that, and he did this, and he that, and then he would he lectured us like every night for a couple of weeks. And the first lecture was on preparation. When we're sitting there, we're not going to listen. We're not going to believe anything. We're not going to listen. Anything he says is baloney, right? Well, you got to be prepared. You got to know your opponent. You got to know the offense. You got to know the defense. You got to know what they want to do. You got to know the tendencies of the defensive player. You got to know what he likes to do and all. And okay, preparation. I'll give you preparation. You need to be prepared if you're going to play at a high level. All right, how about commitment? Mind, body, heart, and soul, most of all self. That person you look at in the mirror in the mornings and say, well, I coulda, but. I was gonna, but. And when I get around to it, I'll do it, but. All the rationalizations, excuses, and cop-outs you give yourself when you don't quite get the job done. And we can all do that. There's another guy in there that's helping us, right? We've got a constant battle in there. So we say, okay, commitment, yeah, maybe you got something there. And then he starts on discipline. And he goes through an hour and a half on discipline. And you don't do things right once in a while. You do them right all the time. Wow. I guess that's possible. But it has never happened to me. So preparation, commitment, discipline, consistency, pride, character, tenacity, fire, hunger, want, burn, need, team. So I began to explain life and success in football. And those qualities are necessary for virtually anything in life. And I believe that if you have those qualities, they will take you wherever you want to go. I do not believe you have to have 165 IQ. Although there was a wonderful program on Charlie Rose a 3 years ago, and Charlie was interviewing a fellow named Watson, James Watson, who headed the DNA decoding project. And it took like 12 years, an incredible project, and a great advancements in medicine and science. And Charlie was saying, you won the Nobel Prize, you had one of the great enhancements or advancements in the history of medicine, you must be a pretty bright fellow. Mr. Watson said, no, Charlie, I had some guys working for me. This guy had 165 IQ, this guy had 160 IQ, this guy did this. And Charlie says, well, you must be pretty bright yourself. You won the prize, you were running the show, you were the leader. I'm a very average guy. I'm 120 IQ. 120? Well, that's very average. He said, that's what I said. I'm a very average IQ. Well, how do you explain your success? I just wanted to get things done. He said, I pushed him. I made him work. I made him do things. I just stayed on top of him. And I'm thinking, wow. So in my few years on this planet, I think the burn, the fire, the hunger, the drive, the need, the want, the intangibles, the unmeasurables, the things that make a difference, and you don't do it right once in a while, you do it right all the time. So Coach Lombardi gave me so many things and so many lessons and so many wonderful moments in life, and I have never played the perfect game. I got close. I had 100% on passing and 98% on running. One game, I missed one guy on a kind of a half block, but I have never been perfect as a human being, but I know what it means, and I look at it and I aspire to it, and I try to be a decent human being and a good person and a good man. So that's what Coach Lombardi gave me.
What was your favorite part about playing for Vince Lombardi?
I'm sorry?
What was your favorite part about playing for Vince Lombardi?
What was hard about him?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry. Favorite part of playing for Coach Lombardi? Okay. Winning. He was a great communicator, and he was a great motivator. And I remember being out in San Francisco in a game, and I got kicked in the ribs and broke a couple ribs. And I left the game for one play and went back in and finished the game. And on Tuesday, my team doc gives me an examination. He said, you have a pulled muscle. And I said, pulled muscle, you're boo-boo. I got a busted rib. Oh, don't worry about it. It won't hurt you. Well, it hurts me now. Don't worry about it. So I go out to practice, and I can't run. I just, very little you do with ribs. They just never, ever quit. So on Thursday, I'm trying to run. Fuzzy and I had a great write-up in the Chicago Trib. Banner headlines, best guards in the NFL, Kramer, Thurston. And the general manager happened to be on the field that day. He was also the head coach. And he didn't separate them all the time, you know. So he looked at that headline, and he's thinking, best guards in the NFL, they're going to want to raise next year. So I gotta shut that down right now. So we're running the sweep, got a rookie guard in there, and he doesn't go deep enough for the back to clear, and they stumble, and the ball carrier stumbles, and I stumble, and it's a mess. And the general manager comes running across the field, best guards in the NFL, my Matt, we got the worst guards in football, the worst. I'm gonna hit him. I'm gonna hit him right in the mouth. I'm gonna bust his face. And I'm walking back toward the huddle. He's walking in front of me. And Don Meredith and I had a couple beers one night, and he was talking about alter egos and consciences and all that. And he had a little guy that he had on his shoulder who was an attorney. And he was an alter ego attorney. His name was Harley Smedlap. And he was with the law firm of Smedlap, and Smedlap. And he gave Meredith information and advice whenever he needed it. And Meredith gave me Harley. And so Harley is sitting on my shoulder and said, you'll be suspended. You'll be out of football. You'll never play another game. I don't care. I'm going to hit him. I'm going to hit him right in the face. I'm going to bust his face. So we get back to the huddle, and he walks another 25 yards past the huddle. And he starts walking back and forth, checking his shoes. And I am seething, and I'm out of control, and I don't know what to do. Bart calls a huddle. I come up and get in the huddle, and I'm staring at him, but he won't look at me. He knows if he looks at me, I go bazonka. So he won't look at me. So Bart claps his hands for us to break the huddle, and I turn very slowly, watching him all the time, and he won't look at me. So I get up line of scrimmage, bend over about 2 inches. They run a play. I don't move. I don't take a step. I walk back to where the huddle is, and I'm looking at him again and trying to figure out what to do. And again, he won't look at me. So the guys come back, and Fuzz, I'm out. I'm done. I'm finished. Get in here. So I take myself out of the practice and walk down the sidelines about 30 yards and get my lip out now, and I start to pout, nobody loves me. Nobody cares. I'm hurting, and they don't. So I'm there about 5 minutes, and here he comes. And he waited just the precise amount of time for me to cool off. And here he comes, right? And he comes down, oh, I didn't mean you. Come on, what's the matter with you? I wasn't talking to you. All right. So I heard him say guards, but he meant guards, you know. He meant the other guards, not me. He didn't mean me. So he made peace with me, apologized in his way, and he would always do that. No matter how difficult the practice, how bad the chewing, how much he reamed you in front of everybody, he'd come up to you and slap you on the head, and one of these days you're going to be the best guard in football, and do something positive. So he never let the practice end or the meeting end or the sun set on a negative conversation. You're much better than that. You can do better than that. You're going to be a hell of a player. And that kind of thing. So he always, no matter what he said to you or did to you or how badly he chewed you out, he came back at the end of the day and patted you on the head and made everything okay. And once he gave you his approval, I think probably there are two things in life that I know about for sure, that to motivate an individual or a child, they need approval and belief in their future and in whatever they're doing. Give them the belief and approval. I had a tremendous example of that with my son, Jordy, who was later played with the Titans for 3 years or so, and he was about 5. And I came home from a self-image psychology seminar in Seattle. Try that. And it was springtime, and Mom wanted to wood moved off the back porch back out by the garage. And, yeah, Jordy and I'll handle that. Come on, Jordan. And he starts snotting and whining and carrying on. And I said, I'll haul, you stack. So I hauled 2-3 loads of wood and looked down, and 2 sticks have been stacked. And my dad wouldn't have tried the self-image psychology seminar. He'd have tried the strap. And my booty would have been whaled the first shot, right? So I'm walking back, got another wheelbarrow full, and I'm going, I got to say something. I got to do something. You know, he knows what we're supposed to do, and he knows he should do it, and I've got to make a statement here. I can whale his booty, or I can try some of that positive stuff. I get there, and he's got 2 sticks stacked, but they're right against the garage. They're on the edge of the garage. They're perfectly together, and they're in perfect shape. And I say, Jordy, I didn't know you could stack wood that good. Those are perfect. Good job. Took about 7 seconds, right? I went back and got another wheelbarrow full of wood. Took a little time, came back. Every stick was stacked. He's sitting on a round with his legs crossed, flipping his foot, with his hand on his knee, bored stiff because he doesn't have anything to do. And I go, wow. Wow. I mean, totally different, motivations. I was motivated by the strap, but I was not happy about it. And I carried it with me for a while, and it was a burden. And all I did was take 8 seconds with this child. Now, we finished a couple loads later. He's got my hand. We walk in the house. Jordy says, Mom, Dad, and I took care of that old wood pile. That wasn't nothing. We took care of it. And he feels good about him, and he feels good about me. And it was the most powerful lesson I think I ever had. So when the situation arrives, not when the child ties his shoes properly, but when he does something with consequence and there's a question as to whether he could do it or not, that little pat on the back, that little belief in the individual, you won't find anything more powerful.
When did you know when Bart Starr could be so special?
It's difficult to say how special Bart was. He was an exceptional human being. I didn't believe anybody was that good when I first got to know Bart. And I watched him for 10 years. I figured I'd catch him with a hog in the closet somewhere. Something would be going on at some time, right? Nobody's this good all the time. So after 10 years, I finally threw in with him. I said, well, Bart's just a very special human being. I'm coming home from a charity event one night after a golf outing and a dinner, and I feel buoyant. I feel good. I feel light. I just feel great. And I'm going, what is this about? How come you feel so good? Well, you were with the guys. Well, I'm with the guys all the time. Well, you had a couple beers. Well, I have a couple beers every once in a while. Well, it was the people. What do you mean the people? The positive people in the room. Negative people don't go to charity events. Negative people don't help out. Negative people don't make a difference in a person's life. These people that come to these events are all positive, trying to help out, trying to make a difference, trying to do something with their life and their neighbor's life. And Bart Starr knows that. And he knew it instinctively at a young age. And he was that way from the day he stepped on the field. We had a little time understanding Bart and who he was. And he was so good. And then there was Horning and McGee and some of the other folks that weren't quite that good. But we didn't know. And Bart was very polite and very quiet. So we're not sure how tough Bart is, how much steel he's got in his spine, how strong his backbone is, how strong his character is. We just haven't seen anything, any display. We're playing the Chicago Bears down in Chicago. And they've got the great middle linebacker like they've had forever. They haven't had a quarterback since 1942, but they've had great middle linebackers. Bill George, Butkus, Urlacher, Singletary, on and on and on. And Bill George was the middle linebacker this day. And the word around the league was that Bart may not be all that stout. So Bart throws a long pass down the right sideline. My defensive tackle stops, turns around, and he's watching the ball. I'm watching the ball. Bart's watching the ball. Bill George isn't watching the ball. Bill's coming. He took about a 5-yard run and hit Bart in the mouth with a forearm and knocked him backwards about 5 yards. Split his lip up into his nose, right up into his nose, and said, "That ought to take care of you, Star, you blinkety-blank blunk." And Bart used a naughty word for the only time in 50 years that I've known him. And he said, "Bleep you, Bill George." He's the first guy I ever heard use bleep. "Bleep you, Bill George, we're coming after you." And I look over there, and the blood is like a hose, just running down the front of his jersey. And I said, "Bart, you better get to the sidelines. You're bleeding like a stuck hog." He said, "Shut up and get in the huddle." Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So he takes us down the field, 40 to 45 yards, bleeding all the time. We scored. Bart went back to the sidelines. Finally, we weren't as delicate as the boys today. We laid him down on the bench and sewed him up right there in front of everybody, and he got about 11 stitches in his upper lip, and he never missed a play. His play calling was a little off. "Can you talk a little funny?" But that day, we began to believe in Bart Starr. And from that moment on, Bart Starr never had to prove himself to anybody on our football team. So it was a very precise moment in life that that moment happened.
Now, we all heard about the Ice Bowl. How cold was the Ice Bowl? And in your words, can you describe the last drive of that game?
Wow. I don't remember any of it. I had suggested that Jethro Pugh was a little high, and Thursday, in a team meeting on Thursday before the game, and that if we needed a sneak for a yard or so, that Jethro was up. Lily was down on the other side. Lily had his nose about that far off the dirt and moved downward. Jethro came up. So Coach ran the film back, said, "That's right, put in a wedge on Pugh." You never know, when they're going to call it or if they're going to call it, or it's just a suggestion. So we get out there, and second half, we were lousy. We had a really bad second half. In fact, in 31 plays, we gained a -9 yards in the second half. Wayne Larrabee told me that about 10 years ago, and I said, "Wayne, I don't think that's right. I don't remember that. I don't remember anything like that." "Jerry," he says, "I think that's correct." He said, "I think it was -5 or -6. He says, I can go get the original play-by-play sheets from the upstairs." And he said, "I'll check it out. We're getting together in a couple of weeks." And he said, "I'll have some numbers for you." He came back in 2 weeks, and he said, -9 yards, 31 plays. Now, what do you do when it's -57 on the chill factor? You're down 3 points. You got 65 yards to go, and you haven't made a yard, an inch, a centimeter in 31 plays, right? Something happened. Something emotional happened. It wasn't physical, it wasn't mental, it was emotional. Bart came in the huddle and said, I asked him years later, I said, "What made you think that we could go 65 yards? I mean, what would give you why would you even try? I mean, we hadn't made a yard." He said, "Jerry, I started to say something. I knew where we were." And he said, looked in your eyes, I looked in Forrest's eyes, I looked in Gilly's eyes, I looked around the huddle. I knew you all knew what we had to do. So I said, all right, let's go. And we elevated our performance. We got emotionally involved. We had to burn the hunger, the want, the fire, the need. And every guy on the team had it. Donnie Anderson played like a champ. Chuck Mercine played like a champ. Gilly and Forrest and Ski. And every guy on that football team elevated their performance. I guess because they could. I guess because they didn't like to lose. And I guess because of the hard work and the commitment and the consistency and the discipline and the perseverance and the pride. But we went down that field 65 yards and scored with 13 seconds to go. Now, the last 13 seconds, my big mouth comes into play about suggesting the quarterback sneak. And if I had known that we were going to run it on the 1 yard line with 13 seconds to go, I might not have suggested it. I might have said, run it over there by Ski. But they called the number, and the field was like this. It was that hard and that slick, and you couldn't get any footing, you couldn't get anything. Bob Skoronsky, captain, come off the ball, and his feet went right out from under him, and he went flat down. His first step, he went flat. Forrest ended up off of his feet, and almost everybody did. But I found a divot, much like a golf divot, that was very similar in size, and it was about 1 inch deep. And my left foot kind of snuggled down in that divot like it was a starting block. And I got a great start. So I came off the ball, and they thought I might have been offsides, but I just had a great start. And Jethro did what I expected him to do. He stood up, and he's 6'7", 265, 70, something like that. But when I got into him, I had leverage on him. I was in position of strength. He was in a position of weakness because he was so high. So that wasn't much of a chore, moving him once I got into him and once we were in that position. So a lot of wonderful moments, and that was certainly a highlight of my life. Guards don't get pointed out very often. They don't get to do anything very often except get their backside chewed. But I went in the locker room, and there had been an article written about Coach Lombardi that was an extremely negative article written by a guy named Leonard Schechter from Esquire magazine. And he actually butchered Coach Lombardi in the article. Said he looked like Mussolini, strutting around like a pigeon with his chest thrown out, calling everybody names, intimidating, doing this. And it was a really nasty article. And Coach Lombardi's mother read it and made her cry. And we heard about it. So I thought, well, if I get a chance, I'm going to say something for Miss Lombardi, Mom. And as luck would have it, Tom Brookshire came over to my locker and had the cameras with him and everything. And he said, Jerry, what about Coach Lombardi? There's a lot of controversy about him. What kind of a guy is him? How do you guys feel about him? I said, Brookie, most of the people don't know Coach Lombardi. They don't know who he is. They don't know about his moral character. They don't know about his ethics. They don't know about any part of him. I said, he is a sensational human being. And this is one beautiful man. And we love him. And his mom heard that. And his coach from West Point, Colonel Blake, heard that and wrote a note about it. And I intended nothing but to make Mom feel better. And it was a moment where the coach came up to me, and he could be so soft and so gentle and so easy. And he had an on or an off switch. And it was off. He came up and he put his arm on my shoulder, and he looked up and down about 3 times and had trouble looking me in the eye. And he goes, that was a nice thing you did, Jerry. That was a nice thing. And that was the end of that story. But he could be a special human being. And the moral character, the fiber, the fairly, squarely, decently by the rules. Nitschke was kind of a renegade his first 2 or 3 years when we called him the junkyard dog. And he became one of the nicest, gentlest, most thoughtful, caring, loving, considerate human beings I've ever known once he quit drinking and found a lady that loved him and a team that loved him and a state that loved him. He became a totally different human being. But he was a little rough around the edges first 2 or 3 years. And there was an opponent right in front of our bench, and the play had pretty much ended, and Nitschke forearmed him, just whaled him. And Coach Lombardi stepped on the field and grabbed Nitschke and said, "Mister, we don't do that kind of crap around here. Fairly, squarely, decently, by the rules." He means it. He really means it. So that's Coach Lombardi, and that's pieces of him.
All right, we have one more question, and then we'll open it up to you guys in the audience. Can you tell us about when they knocked on your door to be selected for the Hall of Fame?
The notification? No. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm glad we all lived long enough to get... They told us that if we were selected for the Hall of Fame, they were going to have a meeting, and somewhere between 3 and 4 in the afternoon, if we were selected, then Mr. Baker would knock on the door. If we were not selected, the janitor would knock on the door. Get out of here. So I'm watching the TV, and there's a guy doing my selection speech, and it's fairly early, like about 10 or so in the morning, and I think, well, they're going to get the older guys out of the way, and then they'll come here first. So if they come about 3:15, that'll be a good sign, and it'll probably mean we're in. If they come at 4 o'clock, not so hot. So I've got my son, couple of my boys, my daughter and friends, and Mark is with me, and there's probably 12, 15 of us in the room, right? And it goes to 3:25, 3:30, and 3:35, and the chatter kind of dies down a little bit, and we've all got that hope, of course, and we're flapping our gums just to fill the air, and it gets quiet, and we hear a knock on the door. Yeah! Everybody cheers, and hey, way to go, yeah! I go to the door, and it's a maid. And she's going, "What's going on?" And so I go back in the room, and now it gets quiet. It really, no chatter, no nothing, just quiet. And we're there till 3:45-ish, and then there's a boom, boom, boom on the door. Now, Mr. Baker, the chairman that's going to notify us, is 6'9", 400 pounds. And he knocks like 6'9", 400 pounds. So we pretty much knew who it was. And I got halfway to the door, and being a smart aleck, I said, "Who is it?" And he's giggling when I open the door, and he gives me a hug. I said, "You are the most beautiful man I have ever seen, ever. You ought to be in Hollywood." So we got a giggle, and I looked behind him, and there were half a dozen film people with cameras and news stuff and whatnot. And I say at that time that there's a good chance that I've made it. It looks like. But it's kind of a hard thing to put in your brain, you know, and make it believable after so many years of imagining what it might be like. And I'm out on Monday, and a fellow is going to do a bust of me, a bronze bust, and I've never had that experience before. And so he's measuring my nose and my eye and my ear and everything with me, and taking a lot of pictures. And I say, it must be real. I must either be in the NFL Hall of Fame or I'm going to be President of the United States. One. So I got my bust, and I looked over at my daughter, who had been carrying my banner for a long time and working herself into a frenzy. And she was lost it, totally lost it. She was crying and got me all messed up for a bit. But it was a wonderful moment, and the whole thing has been just I had ideas in my head, right, back in the 70s when I thought I might go in with the guys, and I got my lip out a little bit and pouted a little bit. I don't care if they ever call. I'm not going to go even if they do call. I don't care. Oh my goodness, sakes alive! And all those angry moments disappeared, and I was like a 3-year-old on Christmas morning. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience, and it's just been very positive all the way along. Just been sensational. People that I had no idea knew me would call across the airport concourse, "Congratulations, Jerry! Way to go, Jerry!" And it's probably like being a quarterback or a running back. You guys got any questions? Sure.
I was at the high school, but from what I've read, the final play was a running play, and no one knew that Star was going to quarterback the field. Is that correct?
I knew. Chuck Mercine did not know, and most of the guys did not know. But when I made the block, I turned around, I made it this way, and I turned around and looked for Bart. I wasn't looking for Chuck, I was looking for Bart. When I saw Bart across the goal line, I knew he had scored. So I knew that Bart was getting the ball, and I think I was the only one that knew, so he must have said something to me on the way up to the huddle. "Jerry, I'm going to keep the ball." But Chuck didn't know it. Chuck was supposed to get the ball on that play, but he didn't know. That's why you see his arms in the air. He's signaling to the referee that he wasn't pushing, that he wasn't making an illegal act, so that there wouldn't be a penalty on that play. But I knew what I had to do, and I knew where it was going to come, and I knew what I was expected to do. And you keep your head up, your eyes open. You try to make contact with your eyes open into that chest. If you can get to his chest, then you get the main part of him. You might slide off one way or the other, but if you can get to that chest with your head and snap when you come off, then you can probably take him one way or the other, wherever he wants to go. But the main thing is the pressure on him immediately to get him going backwards instead of sideways. So I was not surprised by it. Yes, sir.
Knowing the nature of Vince Lombardi then and the type of athletes there are now today, do you think Vince Lombardi will be as successful today as he was then?
Interesting question. All of the guys that played for us were not successful. Coach would be brutal on the field. We had a kid named Luis Hernandez who was played at 270, showed up at 320. Going to be a pro, and he put on about 50 pounds of fat. And Luis was slow now. He'd been pretty good in college, but he was slow. So we'd run the sweep, and, "Hernandez, you're slow, move it." And we'd do something, "Hernandez!" And he did that about 4 or 5 times in a 3-day period, Coach did, right? And we're running another sweep, and Lewis is behind the ball carrier, and there was a, "Hernandez, you're not only fat and slow, you're stupid." Hernandez was gone that afternoon. Bill Quinlan, who was a pretty good football player, a run stopper, a big, strong guy, made some racial comments about Willie Davis getting into the Pro Bowl, and he didn't get in the Pro Bowl, and he thought he had a great year and he should have been in the Pro Bowl, so he went out and got drunk and called Coach Lombardi and made a lot of comments he shouldn't have. And it was in '65, we were playing the championship in '65, and not a word was said for the following week and through the championship. The day after the championship, Quinlan was traded to Detroit. And he would trade people or get rid of people that weren't his kind of people. And he absolutely was totally intolerant of any kind of prejudice. He had been subjected to prejudice himself, and he thought it was stupid. And I think it's stupid. I think we ought to measure people based on their qualities and their contribution to the team and the kind of human being they are, not by whether they're fat or short or tall or ugly or cute or black or green or blue or any of those other things. And what kind of a contribution do they make to the team? How productive are they? Are they part of us? Are they going to make a contribution, or are they going to be a load? Let's judge them by their contribution and by the kind of human being they are. And let's give them a shot. Let's give them a chance. Let's talk to them a little bit. Hey, how you doing? How you been? I had never seen a black person when I joined Green Bay. I was in the 8th grade when I saw the first black person I ever saw. So I didn't know how to talk to black people. Willie Davis, second or third year, joined us and said, came by my locker one day and said, "Jerry, you've had a great year. I think you're going to be all-pro this year." Oh, wow, that's cool. Thank you, Willie, thank you. And I thought about it. I said, well, hell, Willie's had a great year. And I went back by him and I said, Willie, you've had a great year yourself. I think you're going to be all-pro. You really, Jay? I said, yeah, hell yeah, I'd put you in all-pro. So talk a little bit. Have some verbal intercourse to where you at least get some hint of what the person is like and what kind of a human being they are before you make the decision. Thank you.
I'd be interested in any reflections you have on the first 2 Super Bowls.
Well, the first Super Bowl, I bought 4 tickets for my nephews in L.A., and they didn't show up. So I gave them to some kids sitting over by the gate, trying to get in, sneak in or whatever. You guys want to go to the game? Yeah. Come on. So there were about 10,000 empty seats, and it wasn't as big a thing as it was today. We had won the championship in '65 and '66. So we'd won our championship when we played in Super Bowl I. So it was another game, but it was the AFL, NFL championship, but we got $15,000 if we won it, which would equal most people's salary at that time or be close. So we were kind of easy about it. We're watching the films. Kansas City is running the offense is running the play. We're watching their defense. 2 of their safeties run together and knock themselves down. And Max McGee goes, "What's this? What's this? Run that back. Watch these 2 safeties." And they run it back, and he goes, "Da, da, 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 da." So he's singing Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies, right? So we're kind of giggling a little bit, but we get out there, and Buck Buchanan is about 6'8", and about 300, 295 maybe. Johnny Robinson, E.J. Holub, Bobby Bell, they got some pretty good football players. And it took us a half to kind of sober up and understand that we had a game. And so the second half, we came out with a totally different attitude and took care of business like we should have. But that emotional involvement is something that I didn't just turn on and off very often. Normally I had to take it to bed the night before and think about it and think about my opponent and imagine that my opponent had raped my wife, killed my children, shot my dog, burned my house, and he was going to pay. And I didn't want to see anybody when I came on the field. I want to look at the dirt. I want to not look at anybody until I line up against what's his name. And then I'm coming after him. So one other aspect of that, I wrote Instant Replay in '67. And there was a big kid named Charlie Kruger that I played with in the college all-star game. Texas A&M, big Texas boy, 6'5", lean, cowboy, 265, great player. He was late getting into college all-star game, and Mrs. Kruger called about 300 times in the next 3 days. And about every 15 minutes, the phone would ring. Is Charles Kruger there? No, ma'am, Charlie's not here yet. Is Charles Kruger there? No, ma'am, Charlie's not here. Is Charles Kruger there? No, ma'am. So Charlie got there finally on about the third day, and we went, is Charles Kruger there? And so we gave him nothing but fits for the rest of the 10 days we were there. So I spoke about that in Instant Replay, and Charlie read the book, and he comes to Green Bay to play us. And he knows my warm-up procedures and how I'm getting myself together, and I'm really emotional and all that. And he sneaks up behind me. We're going up to the final moments in the locker room. We got 2 minutes for the coach, and then we're coming out to start the game. And he gets right on my neck, and I kind of feel somebody getting really close to me, breathing on me, and he goes, is Gerald Kramer there? Oh, Charlie, you ruined 5 days of preparation. Yeah, it was fun. Yes, in the back.
In the years after the high school, did you ever have a chance to talk with Jethro too? And then what was the nature of that?
Yeah, you know, Jethro was a sweet man. He was a very gentle, very pleasant. We're down in New Orleans for the Cowboy Super Bowl in Super Bowl IV. And I'm with Willie Davis and Jimmy Brown from Cleveland. We'd been to the game, we were sitting together and we on the bus, and we get off and somebody says, let's go out to Cowboys celebration. Let's go out to their victory party. I don't think I'd be welcome there. I don't think that's a very good idea. Oh, come on, Jerry, come on. Okay, but I'm a little uncomfortable with it. So we go out there, and Chuck Howley, there's linebackers, a kid I'd played with in the college all-star game, and he sees us, and he comes over, and they let us in, which surprised me to begin with, but we walk across the hall and talk to Chuck, and then a couple other guys, John David Crow was there, and a couple other guys, and so they're doing okay. And one of them says, I need to get Jethro over here. You need to say hello to Jethro. Well, okay. Jethro, come here. Come over here. So Jethro comes over, right? And this is Jerry Kramer. Hey, Jerry, how you doing? Nice to see you. He was just polite and sweet and nothing, right? No animosity, no anger, nothing. And he says, I want you to meet my wife. And I says, okay. He says, honey, come here. Honey, come here a minute. Come over here. And so she's comes across the way, right? And she's smiling and her hair is flopping and she's just doing wonderful. And he says, honey, this is Jerry Kramer. And she goes, I've heard enough about Jerry Kramer. And she's the only one that indicated how they felt. Although a year ago or so, I was down in Texas doing a Donnie Anderson luncheon for his scholarship fund. And Leroy Jordan, their middle linebacker, I talked to just a few days before about a stem cell project we were both involved in. And I'm at the podium, and we're just ready to start lunch, and the room is full, and everybody's at the table, head table. And Leroy comes in, and he comes over and says, Jerry, I have heard enough about that ice bowl bull boop, 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 boop. He said, I've heard all of it I can stand. I wanted to say hello, but I don't have to stay, so I'm leaving. So he left, and generally they're pretty good about it. They were a young team too, and they won some Super Bowls after that, so they learned, and they made three mistakes that a young team might make. Jethro Pugh made a mistake on the goal line, number one. Bob Hayes, their great wide receiver, when he was not in the play, he had his hands down in his pants. And he would run a pass pattern like this with his hands in his pants. And Herb Adderley and Wood looked at that and said, did you see that? Yeah. Watch and see if he takes his hands out when he's in the play. They watched a couple plays, and he's in the play, and he comes running down the field, and they intercepted a pass because of that. Adderley cheated over to help Wood and let his receiver, who was Hayes, go, and they intercepted the ball. Those two mistakes were enough to make the difference with 3 points. The safety made a couple mistakes in the first half. When Boyd Dollar scored twice, he let Boyd get past him. So they were young. They were going to be a great football team, and they were without their mistakes. But they made some mistakes the old boys didn't make, and that's the difference. Yeah.
All right, we have time for one more question.
One more?
Yep.
Okay.
The Packers have had 3 fantastic quarterbacks. How would you compare and contrast?
Boy, I love all 3 of them. I really enjoy Brett. I didn't love Aaron when he was trying to take Brett's job. And after that, I loved him when he was the man. You know, I didn't like that controversy there. But if I had to pick my quarterback today with my team, I'd pick Bart. With my team, because we weren't a throwing team. We were a running team. We would throw the ball 17, 18 times a game and probably complete 11 or 12. But we would gain 200 yards rushing. In the 65 championship, we gained 210 yards rushing. So he was the quarterback for our team. He was smart. He took care of the ball. He didn't throw interceptions. He didn't fumble. On rare occasions he did, like Dallas. But a bright quarterback who knew where his weapons were and had no ego to overcome and show the world how great he was. He was a team player, and handing that ball off was what he was supposed to do. And it gave him the liberty to go when he wanted to make a pinpoint pass close, because everybody's looking at the run, and we're running and running and running, and all of a sudden Bart does one of these. So he was perfect for our game, and his ego was non-existent. And he wanted the team to win, and he wanted everybody to win. And so I would have to, if you give me my team, I'd have to have Bart in there. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's been a great day for me. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I would say 20 minutes.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right,
Great to be
Jerry
with
will
you.
stay for about 20 more minutes for any photos.
Okay.
His time is limited, so autographs will not be allowed, but he will do photos for the next 20 minutes. Thanks again.
If anybody wants a photo that